This is the video I did not want to have to do, but I've just returned from Salt Lake City, Utah, here in the United States of America to find in my home state of Western Australia, the raids have now begun on people because of their beliefs. So yes, this is the headline: sovereign citizens raided by WA police, more than 100 guns seized. This is the news out of my home state of Western Australia today. I have already been contacted by an individual affected. She has shared her story with me. She said she's never had Facebook. She's been named a sovereign citizen, which is not true. And let me just bring up this story again so we can read through it together, because this is quite, I apologize for my decorum. I'm a bit shocked. I knew that this was coming back in 2022 when they released the new firearm laws that included a section that your views, attitudes and opinions would be used in assessing if you are worthy of having a gun license in Australia and WA specifically. But this story, so 100 firearms seized, targeting homes of sovereign citizens in the wake of the fatal shooting of two police officers in Victoria. So there is a manhunt still going on in the woodlands of Victoria for a gentleman who professed himself to be a sovereign citizen. He has a number of cases against Victoria Police in the courts at the moment, whole other saga, but now this is transcended into my state of Western Australia, who have on the books, as I said before, the ability to take away someone's gun based on their views, attitudes or opinions. So we have here reported a 5-day operation across the metropolitan and regional areas, netted the large haul, with Police Commissioner Cole Blanche said was substantially informed by tip-offs from other firearm owners. So we now have, just to recap what's going on, what the bloody hell is going on in Western Australia. We now have police officers, the jackboots of the state, raiding people's homes and taking their guns if another member of the public called up, dobbed in a mate, and said that they had professed views to be aligned with what is loosely defined as sovereign citizen. So I might seem, apologize for my demeanor, but I distinctly said to my lawyers a month or two ago now that I suspect the views, attitudes and opinions test would be deployed to disarm so-called sovereign citizens. I said that in writing. Now I sound like Aussie Reviews now saying I told you so, but this is the one issue when everyone else was running around saying we can negotiate a better storage matrix or a better property matrix for you lads, like we'll sort out the aspects of the laws which make us a bit pale, we don't want to acknowledge that. While everyone was running around doing that, I was screaming, saying they have just brought in laws to disarm people based on their views, attitudes and opinions. Who gets to determine what views, attitudes and opinions are acceptable in today's society in Western Australia in 2025 to have a firearms license? Who gets to be the arbiter of that truth? Well, we have just seen from this news report, pull it up again, because of tip-offs from other firearm owners. When did the culture change in the firearm owning community in Australia to the point that now we are dobbing in our mates? And I am sitting here on an email from someone who has contacted me through my legal action campaign while I'm sitting here in San Antonio, Texas, saying this is what I was screaming about 3 years ago when I ran for office and no one wanted to return my phone calls or, help me, help you. This is the situation we are now in Western Australia in 2025. How many years after 1996 that our leaders in the shooting organisations have been leading us down the garden path towards fairer firearm laws? And now the jackboots of the states are raiding the homes of individuals who have views, attitudes or opinions that are not aligned with the views of what the state approves of. in 2025. Okay, and I had a little bit more of a look at, okay, well, what is a sovereign citizen? It's not defined in law. I've already had a look. It's a very loosely defined term. There was an awakening, according to the Australian Federal Police during the pandemic, where a lot more people who had a sudden distrust of government are now being defined under this term. Some of you might remember when the FBI here in America said that the Gadsden flag, which I have a very crude Western Australia version of behind me, I'm glad I updated it for this evening's episode, where that was defined as a dangerous group in society. Someone who flew the Gadsden flag was no longer a trusted person in society. And now we have the sovereign citizens of Australia. In WA, we're the Hutt River province, by the way, for those of you who follow Australian history. Definition of a sovereign citizen in the Hutt River province there, proudly so. A folklore story of WA, if you will. And now he would be a victim under these new laws. So the other reason I'm so antagonized by the news out of my home state of Western Australia, not because I was screaming about this 3 years ago saying it's going to be used maliciously, and what's their end goal, by the way, lads? What are we talking about here? What is their end goal? Why would this group of society that has not been judged by their peers, is this still a democracy? Do we still get to be tried by our peers, or not anymore? It's just DOB in a mate. Oh, they said this at a Christmas party once, you better get them. WA 2025. The reason I'm incensed, I have been watching the hearings, as I said, in Parliament House into these new gun laws we have in WA, and the myriad of problems that have been amplified by listening to people who are trying to administer this law. I've watched recently the testimony from the Western Australian Police Force. And of course, Cole Blanche, he was up there in the news proudly saying we had to disarm these people because of their views, attitudes and opinions. They do not meet today's civilized society. How dare they have a distrust of government authority? So I've been watching that, and I just want to play you a few clips because these are the people who have authority over you. They said you can't question their authority. We don't want people like that in our society with firearms. So let's have a look at the people who are ruling over us, and let's just make our own judgment here, if we're allowed to anymore.
Okay, so Rod has some questions about calibre and...
Yeah, there was different feedback we got, I know of about the calibre of firearms and how there was different people saying they were approved or not approved on same size lands and different things. Was there, how did the calibres come about and who decides that on what calibre can be used on what properties and what sizes?
Yeah, so thanks for the question. So there's an information sheet available online now, available to the public, which describes, and we've put into tiers, so the different calibres of firearms for the different sizes of property. Things that are taken into account are the firearms that you need for, the appropriate humane destruction of animals. All that's taken into account.
As well as topography?
Yeah, topography.
Yeah.
But Section 40 of the Act talks about the capability of a firearm. So, of course, if you've got a small property, if say there's a big hill in the middle, you might have a more appropriate reason to use a more high-powered firearm on that property. But if it was flat and there's a school or a road, then, of course, that firearm's probably not appropriate. That information is now available. Had some good feedback as well from...
And
Did you hear that? The topography of your land is now what's being assessed to decide if you have a certain calibre of firearm. The topography, if you have a hill or if it's flat, then that decides what calibre of firearm you get. I can hear my father screaming from Perth, Western Australia, where he is right now on holiday. The topography of the land, someone needs to give these blokes the cartridges of the world. I think they're up to the 17th edition. That to me was required reading. It is based on, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be the makeup artist that mansplains to the men what caliber you decide when you go out hunting is, but this is where we are in WA in 2025. It is your target. I cannot believe we are talking about topography. And these are the men, by the way, who have said that you do not get to question who has authority over you in 2025. Let's just listen to the rest of this. The mind beggars belief.
And it is available online, as Mr McCourt said, but there's also another part to consider in determining calibre and property size alone is not the only formula, if you like, on how that's determined. It always comes back to genuine need, genuine reason. So you as the landowner, if your reason of getting a firearm, for example, is to euthanize cattle, because that's what you've got on your property and that's what you're going to do, that's fine. You'll get your calibre to suit that purpose. If you're going to allow a hunting permission for someone to come on and you say it is to shoot foxes on your property, then they'll get a calibre suitable for that purpose. But if you're going to allow them to come on and euthanize your cattle, then they will also get the bigger calibre. So it does always come back to the genuine reason you are needing that firearm.
Unless you live on a road where a school happens to be, or a property with a bit of a hill. These are the men who rule over us. And I'll just play another video as well, seeing as I'm on a roll. Let's have a listen to the follow-up from this.
Some evidence from our traditional owners that they've had some challenges in accessing land to hunt on, and also therefore their right to hunt being impacted.
So under the old Act, under the 1973 Act, traditional hunting was a recognised genuine need, genuine reason. So Aboriginal persons were able to get a firearms licence based on their traditional hunting. What wasn't in the 73 Act was, so they would have to get if you like, the old property letter, hunting permission from either a pastoralist or a farmer or one of those things. This new Act actually allows for native title body corporates to be able to give those hunting permissions. So rather than someone with traditional hunting rights going to a farmer, they're able to now go to their native title body corporate. So that's been the addition under the new Act, which I think is a good addition. And that has happened. That's been written in the regs. We're now broadening that, as you know, because it didn't quite cover land use agreements, which is a different thing again. So that's going to be included as well. But as a policy decision, that's already been happening anyway. Okay. So, and because it's native title, because you can't stop the traditional rights of hunting, that limit of 15 for a native title body corporate doesn't apply. If the person applying for the hunting permission is a member of that native title group, they can have their hunting permission. They still have to meet the rest of the requirements of getting a firearms licence, but in terms of the hunting permission, it's there.
It's there.
I don't know if you heard that clearly. And for those listening in America, let me explain to you. We have now, in WA, created a two-tiered society where the men who come from Indigenous background have their right to hunt acknowledged to an extent by this government, whereas the rights of the white man, if I can be so crass, is not acknowledged. The traditional hunter-gatherer skills is not acknowledged. And not to be, whatever you want to call me for saying this, but the white man was the one who introduced firearms hunting to the Indigenous Australians. They hunted with spears and other things. That was their tradition of hunting. And that is respected in Australian society. But we are now talking about a class of Australians who, because they can identify as Indigenous, and the bar to do that is you can identify, it's not a certain amount of your heritage needs to be proven. That's just how it is in Australia. You can identify as that. And your right to hunt has to be respected to a higher level than that of a white person saying, well, these are my traditions, this is my culture, this is why I need my right to hunt acknowledged in your laws. We cannot say that as white people in Australia in 2025. I just want to be really clear with what I just played, because you can even see at the start the chair of this committee, Katrina Stratton, I think her name is Dr. Katrina Stratton, she's a proud feminist. She even said that the Indigenous people are concerned that these laws are trampling on their right to hunt. And what are you doing about that? And you just heard him say, well, it's not applicable to them and the number of hunting permissions we issue, because we acknowledge that they have a right that other Australians do not have. I just want to be clear with that. I'll play one more and then I'm going to wrap up for this evening.
Number of hunting permissions is something that I am able to consider.
Yep.
And I know the Commander may want to say something in addition to this, but the feedback very strongly from sporting shooters and others, the industry basically come forward and said it's a little bit complicated by having land sizes, the number of firearms you can give out hunting permissions to. The feedback was pretty strong. Can we make it a little bit simpler? And we then changed to 15 for everyone. Now 15 for all properties that would be registered far exceed the number of licensed firearm owners in WA, so there is more than enough hunting permissions that are able to be given out by landholders for people to get their licences. I think what you've seen there is us listening to those consultation rounds and making changes that better suit our firearm owners in WA. But I don't know if you want to say any more.
No, that was pretty much it. So the original list I think I can find and share with the committee. I think it started at 5, 7, 10, 15 in a scale of property sizes up. And the Commissioner is correct in that the feedback we got from our working groups and others was that it was confusing. And I think anecdotally, a lot of landowners that would have fallen in the category of 5, for example, were holding on to those hunting permissions just in case family came or I've got a close friend. So we saw that people were getting very concerned that they weren't going to be able to get a hunting permission. So through consultation, we decided, given that the average under the old system was about 4 per property owner, that making it at the upper limit of 15 for everyone meant that that sort of grief would go away for everyone.
And has the grief gone away for everyone? Do you feel so much happier now that your needs have been met by your generous overlords that you cannot criticise? I hope so. I really hope so. This is where we're at in Western Australia in 2025. Sorry, just a short video tonight to get this off my chest. I'll be back with more diabolical news, I'm sure, soon out of WA. Please, I have been in contact, like I said, with someone who's been caught up in this DOB in a mate because they have views contrarian to yours and the status quo. So I'm already providing them with assistance, as I'm here to do. But this is where we're at. This is why I didn't bring my guns to WA when I was going through the process of transferring my guns across from South Oz, and I saw these laws come up and I saw that clause, views, attitudes and opinion. You think me with my flag behind me, whichever side it is, you think I would get a gun license? Enemy of the state #1. And no one else was screaming about this at the time. These are the times in which we live, and this is what we get. This is the leadership we have lived under since 1996. This is where we are in Western Australia 2025 with gun laws. I just want people to understand that this is where we are now. The boot of the state will kick in your doors on a Saturday morning without a warrant and take your guns because you professed a view that was different from the status quo, and someone dobbed you in for it. There's a quote about moving to Texas that I'll chuck in there, but I won't put that there now. All I can say is look after each other. There are tough times ahead, and this is what I have been fighting against. This is the video I did not want to do because the time has come again. Ding dong. I'm Kate Fantino, Lady Liberty. I'll talk to you all again soon. Godspeed.